The headline new feature in After Effects CS 5.5 is definitely the new warp stabilizer effect. It differs from traditional stabilization in a few different ways. One, you can decide whether or not the resulting shot is completely locked off and stable, or whether it retains some of the original camera motion. You can even dial in how much smoothness you want in that motion. Secondly, it has several different ways to stabilize a shot. In addition to position, scale, rotation, or corner pinning, it can actually warp the footage and even treat the foreground differently than the background. Thirdly, it has several different options for how it scales and crops the image. Normally with stabilization, you need to scale up the footage to make it refill the frame after you've stabilized it. Well, the warp stabilizer has the ability to synthesize new edges by looking earlier and later in time to see if it can find some pixels to fill in the missing gaps. And fourth, it's mostly automatic. In the vast majority of cases, you don't need to do anything. You don't need to set up a tracking region. It'll do all the tracking for you. Now I'm going to cover the warp stabilizer in 4 different movies. In this one, I'm going to be covering the instant gratification approach. Slap it on any piece of footage, see how it works, decide in between a locked off shot and a smooth moving camera shot. In the second one, I'm going to show how to go a little bit further with that. Try out the different stabilization techniques and also explore the different edge crop techniques. In the third movie, I'm going to get into the advanced parameters, and to a large degree that's the synthesized edges, the ability to fill in new information around the edges when the camera went slightly off frame. And in the fourth movie, I'm going to be tackling a special case that normally would trip up warp stabilizer, but once you know how it's working internally, you can go ahead and do a little bit of prep work to make it fix even difficult shots. So with all that, let's dive in and have some fun. I'm in After Effects CS 5.5, also known as version 10.5, and I'm going to open up a CS5 project from our book Creating Motion Graphics. This is the example project from the chapter on motion stabilization. When I do so, it gives me the usual message that I'm going to upgrade this project from an older version, 10.0, which was CS5, into the new version, 10.5. I click OK. I'm going to start with the comp EX01A Starter. I'll press 0 on the numeric keypad for a quick RAM preview, and you can see that this was a handheld shot and is indeed a bit on the shaky side. In addition to that, it looked like the camera operator was trying to decide exactly what they wanted to frame. Did they want to center this person trying to dig his car out? Or did they want to create some more space here on the right to see the cars entering the frame? They weren't sure. Well, let's make him seem a little bit more sure what he was going to do. I'd like to compare a stabilized and unstabilized version side by side. To do that, I'm going to go to the Composition, Settings, and create a double wide comp. I'll make sure Lock Aspect Ratio is turned off, click on the current width, and I'll take advantage of After Effects being able to do math functions, do times 2 to create a 1440 wide comp. Now you might have noticed that it has centered my previous footage in the middle of my new composition width. But what I want is for this video to be justified off to one side. That's simple. I'll go to the Advanced tab and take advantage of Anchor to say justify all my existing footage to this left side of the composition. Click OK. Take this layer, duplicate it, select the one on the bottom, drag it to the right, and take advantage of another shortcut. I'll hold Command-Shift on Mac or Control-Shift on Windows to make my layer snap to the boundaries of the composition. So now I have 2 copies. I'll select the layer on the left, and I want to apply the brand new warp stabilizer. Problem is, it's brand new. I don't know which effect category it's under. I might not even remember that it's called warp stabilizer. Well, I'll go to the Effects and Presets panel and start typing in stable. There it is, warp stabilizer underneath the distort menu. It's a 32-bit effect, which means it works in floating point mode as well. I'll drag it onto my footage. Now the first thing you notice is After Effects automatically starts analyzing the footage. It says in the background, I can indeed go open up, say, another composition if I wanted to, then come back to this current comp, and it'll still be analyzing. I'll bring the Effect Control panel forward, and you can see it's counting off the frames that it's busy analyzing. When it's done analyzing, then it stabilizes the shot, and that step happens a lot faster. All of that data, analyzing the movement of these pixels from frame to frame, and the stabilization data is saved with the warp stabilizer effect. With the layer selected, I'll press U and reveal no keyframes. There are none of the normal motion tracker stabilizer keyframes with the warp stabilizer. It's all stored in the effect. And by the way, that internal data will inflate the size of your project file a little bit, but we're talking megabytes here, not gigabytes or anything like that. Okay, let's go ahead and RAM preview and compare these 2 shots side by side. I'll press 0, let them queue up. And now we see these two shots. The one on the right is the original, and you can see the amount of bounce and uncertainty. And the one on the left is the stabilized shot. A much smoother camera pan from this person being centered to seeing the cars enter from the right. If you want to get a clue as to just how much stabilization is going on, look at this little burn-in on the footage. You can see how much that's bouncing around. That's the amount of bounce and jitter the warp stabilizer is taking out of this shot. You've got a couple of choices. You can go ahead and say smooth motion or no motion whatsoever. If I select that, it does not have to analyze, but it does need to re-stabilize a shot, which again happens relatively fast. I'll press 0 to RAM preview, and now I have a locked down shot. And again, I didn't have to do much. I just basically dragged warp stabilizer onto this clip. And no, I've not spent hours trying to find a clip that this works on. It actually does work pretty darn well on a large variety of footage. Anyway, you know, locked down camera shots are just so cable TV in the past. I like smooth motion, but maybe I don't like quite as much motion. Okay, I'll just increase the amount of smoothness, maybe to 100%. Or I can go beyond 100, say to 150, to really cut down on the camera movement. Press Enter, it restabilizes the shot, press 0 to RAM preview, and now I have an even more gradual camera pan from this person being centered to seeing what's happening on the right side of the screen. If that's too smooth, I'll just go to a smaller value, like only 25% stable. 0 to RAM preview. And now you'll see I've got a little more of the up movement here at the end of the shot, and a little bit more of the natural camera drift that was in the original footage. I'll go back to 50. And that's the instant gratification approach to using the warp stabilizer. It really is that simple. However, if you have a tricky shot, it is worth learning what these individual parameters, particularly in the advanced section, do. And that's what I'll cover in the next movies.